Elon Musk never saw it coming. For a man who had spent his life defying limits, launching rockets, reimagining transportation, and even flirting with the edges of artificial intelligence, he thought he had seen it all. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what was about to happen. It started with a letter. Not an email, not a phone call, but a real physical letter, delivered by hand. In this age of encrypted messaging and biometric authentication, something about that alone sent a chill down his spine. The courier, if he could even be called that, was no ordinary messenger. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his face expressionless, his movements calculated, he barely acknowledged Musk as he handed over the envelope. No words, no explanation, just a single subtle nod before disappearing into the world as if he had never existed. Musk turned the envelope over in his hands. No return address. The paper, unlike any he had ever touched, felt oddly smooth, almost synthetic, as if engineered for a purpose beyond ordinary communication. Inside was a single sheet of paper, 4 words stark and cold. Your presence is required. No explanation, no signature, no official markings. But the address at the bottom sent a jolt through his chest like an electric current. Secret Service Headquarters, Washington, D.C. It wasn't a request, it wasn't an invitation, it was something else. Musk had dealt with government agencies before, sometimes as an ally, sometimes as an adversary, but always in the realm of business and politics. Never like this. Never with this level of mystery. Yet, despite the eerie nature of the summons, he knew one thing about himself. Curiosity had always been his greatest motivator. And so, within the hour, he was behind the wheel of his Tesla, weaving through the highways at speeds most wouldn't dare. No security details, no legal counsel. Just him and the feeling, no, the certainty, that whatever lay ahead was bigger than anything he had ever encountered before. When he arrived, the first thing that struck him wasn't the usual ironclad security measures. There were no guards blocking his entry, no checkpoints demanding identification, no scrutinizing stares from armed personnel. They were expecting him. The door slid open as he approached, almost as if the building itself had been programmed to let him in. A silent agent in yet another black suit, his face devoid of all emotion, appeared at his side. Without a word, he turned and walked. Musk followed. The hallways were dimly lit, stretching longer than seemed possible. The air carried a sterile metallic scent, but beneath it was something else. Something almost electrical. Then finally, they stopped. A large, unmarked door. The agent swiped an access card, and with a low hiss of compressed air, the door slid open. Musk stepped inside. The room was nothing like what he had expected. No high-tech government monitoring stations, no classified blueprints for some secretive military project. Instead, it was almost archaic. Metal file cabinets lined the walls, each drawer meticulously labeled with names, dates, numbers, decades worth of information stored in the most analog way possible. And in the center of the room, under the cold glow of a single overhead light, lay a thick folder. It had one name stamped on the front in bold black ink. Elon Musk. His pulse quickened. This wasn't some routine briefing. This wasn't a file detailing his public endeavors or government scrutiny of his businesses. This was something else. He reached for the folder, flipped it open, and what he saw made the air catch in his throat. It was his life. Not just the highlights, not just the well-documented milestones, everything. His childhood in South Africa, his decision to move to Canada, the creation of Zip2, PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, private conversations no one should have known, thoughts, fleeting, passing thoughts that had never been spoken aloud. Every moment, every turning point documented in impossible detail. And then, his eyes landed on the final entry, a single chilling line. Elon Musk will disappear in 48 hours. The words burned into his vision like a scar. This wasn't a warning, this wasn't speculation. This was a statement, a certainty, and before he could fully process it, the door behind him clicked shut. A voice broke the silence. "Mr. Musk," it said, "we need to talk." Elon Musk stared at the words before him, his pulse pounding as the chilling message sank in. Elon Musk will disappear in 48 hours. The phrase wasn't a question, nor a theory. It was written as an undeniable certainty, a fact that had yet to unfold. His mind raced, logical thought processes clashing against the impossibility of what he was seeing. Someone, somewhere, had recorded every detail of his life, including events that had not yet occurred. And now, according to this file, his existence was set to come to an abrupt and unexplained end. Before he could fully process the gravity of it, the door behind him clicked shut, sealing him inside the room. A man had entered, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in the same sharp black suit as the silent escort who had guided him through the building. He carried an aura of authority, a presence that suggested he was accustomed to being in control. His slate-gray eyes were sharp with urgency, scanning Musk with the kind of intensity that indicated he knew something Musk did not. The man introduced himself as Agent Langley and wasted no time in delivering a revelation that shifted the very foundation of Musk's reality. The file before him, Langley explained, was not a product of government surveillance, nor was it the result of some advanced intelligence-gathering operation. It had appeared, without warning, without a sender, without explanation. The U.S. government had been receiving similar files for decades, each one detailing the lives and fates of individuals who would go on to shape history. And every file had one thing in common: they were never wrong. Langley continued, his voice level but firm, describing how these files had arrived like clockwork, containing information that defied logic. The records were perfect, accurate beyond what any intelligence agency could possibly compile. The files predated the events themselves, containing knowledge of choices that had not yet been made, paths that had yet to be walked. Each file foretold a future that, without fail, came to pass. Musk's stomach tightened as the list of past recipients unfolded before him. The names sent a shiver down his spine: J. Robert Oppenheimer, Alan Turing, Nikola Tesla, Steve Jobs. Each of them had revolutionized human progress. Each had received one of these files, and each had vanished. The realization clawed at the edges of his mind. These weren't ordinary disappearances. There were no bodies, no explanations, no traces left behind. These individuals had been erased, not just from life, but seemingly from existence itself. Langley's voice carried a weight of urgency as he laid out the government's goal. They wanted to stop it. They had spent years trying to decode the nature of the files, attempting to understand who or what was behind them. Every experiment, every line of inquiry had led to dead ends, wiped data, and inexplicable failures. But no one, not a single person, had managed to escape the fate that was written within those pages. Now, Musk was the latest name on the list, and time was already ticking. Musk's analytical mind worked through the problem, dissecting every possible angle. If these files weren't predictions but statements of certainty, then the question wasn't whether they were correct, but rather whether they could be wrong. Was it possible to break free from the trajectory that had been meticulously documented? Was fate as immutable as the pages suggested? Or was there a way to rewrite the script? Langley's words rang in his ears. If anyone could break the pattern, it was him. The gravity of the situation bore down on Musk, but fear was not an emotion he was accustomed to indulging. He had spent his life defying expectations, pushing past barriers that others had deemed insurmountable. This was no different. With less than 48 hours before he was set to disappear, he had a single objective. He would prove the file wrong, and to do that, he needed to find out who or what was behind it. The weight of what Elon Musk had just learned settled deep in his chest like a heavy stone. A document that should not exist had laid out his past, his present, and now his imminent disappearance. The reality of it defied logic, yet the evidence was undeniable. Decades of classified files had appeared without origin, documenting the lives of the world's greatest innovators, visionaries who had propelled humanity forward, only for each of them to vanish without explanation. The pattern was unbroken, the certainty absolute. But Musk had never been one to accept inevitability. His entire life had been spent proving the impossible wrong, breaking rules that others believed were immutable. If this file had dictated his future, then his only option was to disrupt it before it could come to pass. He had no intention of vanishing like those before him. The first step was to analyze the files. The government had spent years attempting to decipher the origins and mechanics behind them, yet no clear explanation had ever surfaced. The files could not be traced to a sender, nor could they be digitally copied. Every attempt to upload their contents into a computer resulted in total system corruption, erasing not just the files themselves, but anything else stored alongside them. It was as if some unseen force actively prevented their replication, keeping them confined to physical paper, untouched by modern technology. The implications were staggering. If these files truly followed no known method of creation or delivery, then Musk was dealing with something far beyond conventional espionage or predictive intelligence. The more he considered the evidence, the more his mind turned toward an unsettling possibility. These files were not predicting the future. They were causing it. If the files themselves dictated reality, then the moment he read his own, he had stepped into a preordained sequence of events. The thought gnawed at him. Every person before him had tried to fight their fate, and yet all of them had vanished. Was it possible that their mere awareness of the file had locked them into their destiny? Had their actions to prevent it only accelerated the process? If that were true, then the key to survival wasn't just running or hiding. It was breaking the sequence entirely. He needed data, every file, every recorded case, every pattern that had emerged over the years. If a flaw existed in the system, he would find it. He spent hours poring over the records, searching for an anomaly, a mistake, a deviation in the otherwise flawless progression of disappearances. Page after page, name after name, each a disruptor, a thinker, a revolutionary who had reshaped the course of human history. And then, a revelation. The timing of the disappearances followed an unmistakable mathematical structure. Each event was spaced according to a Fibonacci sequence, a pattern found throughout nature, in galaxies, in DNA, in the very fabric of existence itself. The disappearances were not random. They were unfolding in a precise order, a carefully structured chain of cause and effect. This changed everything. If the vanishings followed a calculated pattern, then they were not acts of chaos, but of design. Someone or something was orchestrating them, pruning specific individuals from history with mathematical precision. The files weren't just passive observations of the future, they were instruments of control. The thought sent a chill through Musk's veins. He had spent years fearing centralized authority, warning against the dangers of unchecked power in artificial intelligence and government oversight. Yet this was something much more profound. If these files were editing history, then the entity behind them was shaping the very trajectory of human progress. The question that remained was why? The pattern suggested intent. Someone or something was removing individuals who had reshaped the world. But was it to protect humanity from advancing too fast? Or was it to keep humanity restrained? Time was slipping away. Every passing minute brought him closer to the moment the file had predicted. But if the future had already been written, then his only choice was to rewrite it before it could be enforced. There was one way to do it. He needed to disrupt the pattern. The files dictated events with absolute certainty, but certainty depended on predictability. If he could introduce an element of chaos, something completely unaccounted for, he could break the loop. And there was only one way to do that, and he needed to predict the next disappearance before it happened and get there first. If he could find the next target, intervene before the event took place, and force an outcome that the files had not accounted for, then he could prove that the future was not set in stone. He ran the calculations, mapping out the Fibonacci sequence of past disappearances. The intervals between vanishings were growing shorter, the frequency increasing. And, based on the trajectory of the pattern, the next disappearance was set to occur within 24 hours. The target was a name he had never heard before, Dr. Evelyn Carter. Her file revealed that she was a theoretical physicist, specializing in quantum time dilation and alternate reality theories. A woman who, like those before her, was pushing the boundaries of human understanding in ways that traditional science had yet to fully grasp. This was it. If the Watchers, whoever or whatever they were truly controlling human progress, then Dr. Carter was next in line to be erased. And if he could prevent it, if he could stand in the way of their interference, then he might be able to expose the force that had remained hidden in the shadows for decades. The clock was ticking and the countdown had begun. The only question that remained was who would disappear first, Dr. Carter or Elon Musk? Elon Musk moved with urgency, his mind working at a speed that would have been overwhelming to anyone else. The Fibonacci sequence had given him an answer, a name, a person whose disappearance was scheduled to happen in less than 24 hours. Dr. Evelyn Carter, a theoretical physicist buried deep within the classified sectors of academia, working on concepts that most of the world had never heard of. Her research focused on quantum time dilation and alternate reality theories, an area of science that had long been dismissed by mainstream institutions but clearly posed enough of a threat for her to be targeted next. Musk didn't believe in coincidences. The fact that the disappearances followed a mathematical pattern suggested a larger framework at play, an algorithm governing who was removed and when. If the Watchers were removing the world's greatest disruptors, then Carter was on the verge of something monumental, something that pushed too close to a boundary they refused to let humanity cross. The thought was as exhilarating as it was terrifying. The mission was clear: reach Carter before they did. He wasted no time securing the fastest mode of travel available, utilizing one of his private aircrafts to reach the remote location of her research facility in the deserts of New Mexico. The government had done its part, pulling strings to clear all obstacles in his way. Time was the enemy now, and every second mattered. As he stared out of the window of the aircraft, the weight of what he was doing settled deeper into his mind. If this was real, if these entities had been deliberately altering the course of human history, then what had humanity truly lost? What advancements had been stolen from them? What discoveries had been erased before they could change the world? The idea was staggering. The plane landed under the cover of darkness. The facility was nothing more than a concrete structure, hidden away from public view, heavily secured yet almost abandoned in its isolation. Musk moved quickly through the perimeter, bypassing security that had already been briefed on his arrival. The deeper he went, the more his instincts told him that time was running out. Dr. Carter had already noticed the anomalies. Her research had led her to something she wasn't meant to see: reality inconsistencies, minute fluctuations in the fabric of existence that should not have been possible. She had unknowingly identified the same patterns that Musk had uncovered, the signs that something was actively altering reality. And then the lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the air, an unnatural frequency that sent shivers through the walls of the building. The sensation was undeniable. They had arrived. The Watchers didn't make mistakes. They operated with precision, erasing disruptions before they could escalate. And now, Musk had thrown himself directly into their path. The temperature in the room seemed to shift, the air becoming too still, the shadows stretching in ways that defied natural physics. There was no sound, yet an overwhelming presence filled the space around him. The moment was here. The rewriting of reality was about to take place. But Musk was no ordinary disruptor. Unlike those before him, he knew they were coming. He had prepared for this. The human mind might be susceptible to manipulation, to memory alteration, to forgetting, but machines were not. He had anticipated that any digital attempts to record the Watchers would fail. The corruption of data, the erasure of digital footprints, it had been a consistent pattern. But what if, instead of trying to capture them, he overloaded the system with chaotic data? Before the moment could fully take hold, before the rewrite could finalize, Musk executed his plan. Every system in the facility had been programmed with an artificial intelligence, an isolated, air-gapped neural processor designed to flood reality itself with randomized quantum data. The Watchers operated on precision. Their entire function depended on control, on a predictable sequence of events that unfolded exactly as planned. But chaos was the enemy of control. The second the disruption sequence activated, the air rippled. The hum in the room glitched. The shadows that had begun stretching toward him twitched, as if confused. Something had changed. For the first time in their long, unseen existence, the Watchers hesitated. Musk had broken the script. The rewrite faltered. Reality flickered between two states, neither solid nor erased, neither past nor present. The rules that governed their influence had been challenged, and in that single instant of uncertainty, Carter remained exactly where she was. The disruption worked, but Musk knew this was far from over. He had defied them, but in doing so, he had revealed something even more dangerous: himself. He wasn't just another disruptor in their system. He was now a direct anomaly, an unaccounted for variable that had changed the outcome of an event for the first time in recorded history. This was no longer about a scheduled disappearance. This was now war. As the room settled back into its original state, the realization struck him like a thunderclap. He had just broken reality, and the Watchers would not let that go unanswered. Elon Musk had done what no one else before him had managed to do. He had broken the script. The Watchers had arrived to erase Dr. Evelyn Carter, to remove her from existence, as they had done with countless visionaries before her. But they had hesitated. And in that hesitation, something had changed. For the first time, an event in their files had failed to unfold as predicted. Carter had not disappeared. The timeline had fractured. And now Musk had become something much more dangerous than just another target. He had become an anomaly. The moment the disruption took effect, the presence in the room had glitched. A phenomenon Musk could only describe as reality itself, stuttering, as if struggling to comprehend an event that had no precedent. The Watchers had been forced into an error. Whatever force governed their existence had momentarily lost its grip. But he knew the fight was far from over. The disruption may have halted the rewrite, but it had also exposed him. The Watchers were not just entities observing reality, they were enforcing it. And now, Musk was no longer just a disruptor on their list. He had become the first human to interfere with their design. The air in the room grew heavy, the unnatural silence stretching, as if something unseen was recalibrating, adapting, deciding on its next course of action. Musk felt it, a shift in the fabric of space, the kind of shift that suggested whatever controlled these forces was now reacting to his interference. He had their full attention. The escape had to happen now. He grabbed Dr. Carter's research, the very data that had made her a target in the first place, and moved quickly. This information, the anomalies she had tracked, the patterns she had uncovered, everything about it had led to this moment. The research itself was proof that the Watchers existed, that the world had been manipulated, that humanity's progress had been controlled from the shadows for centuries. The realization hit him harder than expected. If the Watchers had been influencing history for this long, then how much of what humanity had achieved was truly its own? How many of the world's greatest minds had been erased before they could reshape the future? What alternate path had been stolen? The answer was terrifying: an entire future lost. If Musk had never received that file, if he had never uncovered the pattern, he would have been erased like all the others. But now he had proof. And more than proof, he had time, even if it was running out fast. Dr. Carter followed without question, her mind racing to process what had just happened. She had spent years searching for inconsistencies in the timeline, anomalies that suggested something was rewriting reality. But she had never expected to witness it firsthand. She knew the rules of physics. She understood cause and effect, the fabric of space-time. And yet, what she had just experienced defied every law of nature. The two of them reached the exit of the facility just as the world around them shuddered. Something was pushing back. The Watchers were retaliating. The ground beneath them seemed to vibrate at an unnatural frequency, an invisible force pressing against reality itself. The fabric of the world was shifting, adjusting, as if trying to erase the failure that had just occurred. The disruption had forced an error in their system, and now they were trying to correct it. Musk had expected this. The Watchers operated within a structured reality. They had rules, unspoken laws that governed their influence. He had broken one of those laws, and now they were rewriting the rules to compensate. The air shimmered. The sky above them darkened, though no clouds had formed. The pressure grew heavier, as though the atmosphere itself was folding inward. They were no longer just dealing with an erasure event. This was something much worse. This was a reset. If the Watchers couldn't erase Dr. Carter individually, they would erase everything. Musk's mind worked at an impossible speed, cycling through every possibility. If the Watchers were capable of rewriting reality, then their power extended beyond simply removing individuals. They could alter history, restructure the very nature of existence itself. But if they were willing to go to these lengths, then that meant something even more important. They were afraid. The Watchers had spent centuries acting in secrecy, manipulating human progress without revealing themselves. But now, that secrecy had been compromised. A mistake had been made. Musk had done something they hadn't accounted for, and that meant there was still a way to win. The key was the files. The Watchers had gone to extreme lengths to keep them from being digitized, to prevent their contents from being analyzed by conventional technology. But what if their vulnerability wasn't in the files themselves? What if their weakness lay in the very act of exposure? If their power relied on remaining unseen, then Musk's best weapon was bringing them into the light. There was no time for careful planning. Every second wasted increased the risk of a full reset. Musk accessed his private servers remotely, using encrypted satellite signals to bypass every security measure the world had in place. Every ounce of classified research, every mathematical inconsistency that had been buried, every record of past disappearances, he uploaded them all. And then he did something no one before him had dared to do. He initiated a global broadcast. Every major network, every social media platform, every digital billboard, every satellite-linked device. The signal was transmitted simultaneously, reaching millions of screens in real time. The world had been manipulated for centuries, and now, for the first time, the world was going to see the truth. The data spilled onto screens across the planet, an overwhelming flood of information, connecting the disappearances, exposing the Watchers, revealing the true history that had been hidden. It was no longer a secret. It was no longer buried. It was everywhere. And then something incredible happened. The world fought back. Scientists, historians, theorists, everyone who had ever questioned the inconsistencies in history, who had suspected something was wrong, they saw the data and they believed it. The Watchers had erased individuals, but they had never encountered an event like this, an event too widespread to erase. Musk had forced a paradox. The moment the truth was observed by millions, it became part of the very fabric of reality. It could no longer be altered. The Watchers had lost control. The pressure in the air shattered. The trembling ground stilled. The world, for the first time in centuries, belonged to humanity again. Musk took a breath, his mind still reeling. The countdown on his life had ended, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The Watchers had operated from the shadows for too long. They had shaped the course of history, altered the trajectory of human civilization itself. But now their existence had been revealed, and if they still had power, then that power was fading. Musk didn't know what would happen next. But what he did know was this: humanity was no longer under their control, and the future was finally free. The world had changed in an instant. Elon Musk had done what no one before him had dared to attempt. He had exposed the Watchers. Their presence, their control, their manipulation of history, it was no longer hidden in the shadows of secrecy. It was out in the open, visible to millions. The global broadcast had been a direct assault on their system, forcing their existence into the consciousness of the world. The Watchers had survived for centuries by operating unseen, by keeping their interventions undetectable. But now their most fundamental rule had been broken. The consequences were immediate. Reality shuddered. The fabric of existence itself seemed to strain, as if the universe was caught between two competing versions of history, one dictated by the Watchers, the other now being reshaped by human awareness. For a fleeting moment, Musk felt the sheer weight of what had just happened. The Watchers weren't just fading, they were breaking. Their presence had depended on control, on their ability to alter events without resistance. But Musk had forced millions of minds to witness their interference, and with that, their grip was collapsing. And then, the backlash began. The hum returned, deeper, louder than before. It was no longer the quiet, eerie vibration he had first felt at the Secret Service headquarters. This was something else. This was desperation. The Watchers had been wounded, but they were not gone. A force unlike anything Musk had ever experienced surged through the air. The sky darkened, not with clouds but with something far more unnatural. The very concept of night pressed down upon reality, as if the world itself was flickering between existence and erasure. Time was unraveling. The Watchers, now exposed and vulnerable, were making their final move. If they couldn't erase Musk, if they couldn't rewrite history without consequence, then they would do the only thing left in their power: reset everything. A full erasure. Not just of him, not just of Carter, but of all human progress. If the Watchers could no longer shape humanity in the shadows, they would take everything back to zero. Musk understood it immediately. This wasn't an attack on a person. This was an attack on history itself. If they succeeded, civilization wouldn't just lose its great minds. It would lose everything, every technological leap, every innovation, every advancement that had been made throughout time. The world would be reset to primal chaos, a blank slate, an existence where the Watchers would once again hold complete control. He refused to let that happen. Musk knew that if the Watchers thrived on control, then chaos was their weakness. Their power came from structure, from removing disruptors before they could push humanity too far. But what if there were too many disruptors to contain? What if the system was overloaded? The answer was clear. He had to break reality completely. If the Watchers were trying to reset everything, he needed to force an evolution faster than they could erase it. Musk accessed his global networks, his satellites, his AI infrastructure, his systems at Tesla, at SpaceX, at Neuralink. Every ounce of digital processing power under his control was directed toward a singular goal: accelerating human progress at a speed never before attempted. If the Watchers had always kept humanity one step behind, then he would force the species 10 steps ahead, instantly. The plan was reckless, insane, perfect. He activated every artificial intelligence system in his network, feeding it Carter's research, the anomalies, the gaps in reality the Watchers had tried to conceal. Neuralink's data processing power combined with quantum algorithms ripped open the very concept of time itself. And then he let the machines evolve, and he forced an acceleration event, one so powerful that it pushed humanity beyond the threshold the Watchers had worked so hard to contain. This was the moment the Watchers had feared for centuries. Humanity wasn't being erased. It was ascending. The world shattered, time fractured, and for the first time, Musk saw them for what they truly were. The Watchers weren't gods. They weren't invincible. They were gatekeepers. Entities that had stood between what was and what could be. And now, their gate had been broken. The hum reached an unbearable crescendo. The Watchers screamed. It was a soundless, endless wail, a frequency that Musk felt inside his mind, inside the core of existence itself. They were being torn apart by the very thing they had spent centuries trying to suppress: progress. The shadows collapsed, the sky cleared, the pressure vanished. The Watchers were gone. Musk stood in the silence, his pulse slowing, his mind processing what had just happened. He had forced the next stage of human evolution. He had removed the limitations that had been placed on progress. And now the future was unwritten. The countdown was over. Humanity was finally free. The world would never be the same. The files had been exposed. The Watchers had been defeated. And yet something deeper had changed. Musk could feel it. The air felt lighter, as if history itself had been rewritten. There were no missing people, no erased visionaries. The minds that had once been removed from existence had returned. The timeline had corrected itself. Carter stood beside him, staring at the vast sky above. The weight of the moment settled between them. Humanity had been shackled for so long, and they had never even known it. Now they had a choice. For the first time, they could shape their own future. No more hidden forces. No more invisible hands guiding them, just infinite possibility. Musk allowed himself a rare moment of stillness, knowing that this was just the beginning. The greatest age of human discovery had just begun. And this time, no one could stop it.